Welcome to today's episode. I am speaking with Josh Lorea, who is an artist, and we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about the story behind his comic book because it's very unique. It's based off of Aztec superheroes, which is rare. But one of the things that we talk about is NFTs, which is something very foreign to so many people. And you might be thinking, well, why are you talking about NFTs? Usually we talk about stuff with kids, but this does involve kids. So please give it a chance. I know it might be a lot of information, but listen to what he's got to say. And if you have a child that is an artist, I think that this episode has a ton of value. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to Josh. So that's a disclaimer for today. All right, thanks. Let's get started. So without further ado, here's Josh. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Dali.
You're so welcome. So Josh, let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you even begin this idea of starting the comic book?
Yeah, my background is a nerdy one, right? So my background's actually in engineering, and I went to school for that, and I spent some time in that field. But along the way, I developed, kind of a fandom for all the superhero movies that were coming out, particularly Marvel. And I feel like the conversation a lot of times among the fans of color were like, oh, when are they going to start like introducing some of the characters of color, heroes of color, and this coming from me as an adult, I could only imagine what a child might be wanting for, whether that's conscious or unconscious. And so after a good amount of time of kind of just complaining or like griping, it was kind of like, well, I guess I might as well start something. I've always been into art, and it was a hobby that I was developing while I was in my career in engineering. And it got to a point where it became more, focused and more with the more direction as I started coming up with this idea and started reading books on how to write a script, watching videos instructively on how to draw comics and how to do these storylines and stuff like that, how to build a universe, Joseph Campbell type stuff. And so that was it kind of all came together around the time that my girlfriend Christine took a job here in Guatemala, and I was able to dedicate time fully to the comic.
Oh, that's so interesting. And that's amazing. See how the things just align themselves?
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. So before you even, started and all this, as a kid, were you always into drawing? Because I love that you post on your Instagram page the process. It's really cool. So, and you look like such a pro. So how long have you been drawing?
Thanks. Yeah, I've always had an interest in drawing, and it's one of those things. And I think our culture, it's not one culture, obviously, Latinos, but it's in my, family, I feel like it was always looked as a hobby. So it was always something I did on the side or, in the margins of my paper during class. And it was always something that was kind of something I always aspired to do, right? It's like, oh, after I get these good grades, I'm going to spend more time drawing. After I get into high school and get into AP classes, then I'll spend more time drawing. After I get into a good college, then I'll spend more time drawing. After I graduate, after I get a job, after I get a promotion. And so, so it was always aspirational. And it came to a point where I had asked for, I had been practicing after work, and it was something that was like, I finally had the time to do it. I had my job wasn't so time consuming that I couldn't do it on the weekends or a little bit in the evenings. And so my evenings and my weekends were kind of dedicated to creating the skill and learning the skill after work. But I've been doing good in my job, and I asked for a raise, a little raise. And my boss was like, well, actually, if you get this certification, then you could get the raise. And what that would do is take the time that I finally, after all these years, finally carved out for my art. And it would take that up to get this certification for this raise. And so that was the point where I was like, no, I don't want the raise that much. I don't think I want to do this job for that much longer, or it doesn't even have to be that much longer. I know I'm not going to do it for the rest of my life now. And so that's when it kind of became, all right, how do I make this into like a job or a lifestyle or something I can do full time?
Oh, I love that. So then that's your intent, to be full time and continue the series.
Yeah, I mean, I'm full time now. But yeah, my intent is to continue the series.
Oh, that's really good. I love that. So when you were, because you have an engineering background, and you said something there that a lot of us grew up with, when our parents see us drawing, sketching, no matter how good we are, they just said, oh, that's fine. That's cool, mija or mijo, qué bonito. But they don't ever consider it to become something that you make your living off of. Mm-hmm. So were there any people that supported you and said, hey, you might want to, have you considered making that into a business somehow?
Yeah, I don't know. Not when I was younger. It wasn't really, it's interesting too, because the world's changed too. Mm-hmm. Like when I was younger, my youngest uncle, he had some artistic proclivities too. He went into engineering as well, but there was no, the internet was kind of just coming out, and you could sell stuff, but it would be like on eBay and stuff like that. So it wasn't until it was actually my own thinking, right? It's interesting that most of the time our own ideas sometimes are generally rooted in kind of like an innate, how do you say it? Like intuition. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So, with some of the entrepreneurial spirit that my dad had, and some of the, technical, just the nature of learning how things work through engineering, I put it together that, of course, it could be a business. Like, why wouldn't it? Like, comic book companies have existed for, decades, and movies, that's art. Everything is art, right? So it was kind of something that was innately in my head. And it wasn't until like I started dating Christine that she kind of promoted me, hey, make sure that you do this art thing, make time for it, and make sure that it doesn't fall to the wayside, because I see that it makes you happy, and why not? Mm-hmm. Be happy. And so that kind of progressed into the same way. She was kind of like, do you think you could do something, as a job for this? And that's kind of when the ball started rolling. She's been one of my biggest critics and one of my biggest biggest fan, really. So
that's good. And that can be so tough, especially because you have a relationship there going on.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that, because my husband too, he's like, yeah, they'll be honest. And sometimes that hurts, but that they're doing it because they want you to improve and, to just do better. So here you are creating this comic book series. Let's talk about the first series. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So this first series was really started because I wanted to create the origin story for some characters I designed based on me and my brothers, right? So one day I was just hanging around my brothers, and I was like, man, these guys are really badasses, you know, they're my heroes right now. So I was like, let me turn these guys into superheroes. And so I had adult versions of superheroes that were based on, inspired by my brothers. And so from there, I was like, how where how could I make this a really unique like origin story? And then that's when everything kind of like exploded in my brain, and I started building it. So essentially, the story is that there's these children. They were adopted by Latino parents, and that was important to me because I feel like, because me and my girlfriend don't want to have kids, but if we ever do, we want to adopt. So there's sometimes some stigma around adopting. So these 4 kids, they're adopted after being found in this like protective force field, and they're too young to kind of remember that. And when they get older, they that's where we enter into like the main story of this series. They know they have like powers, like magical powers, superpowers, but they don't know why, and neither do the parents. But the parents then reveal like, hey, we didn't adopt you from an adoption agency, we found you in this protective force field. And they go on a journey to kind of find out the history of that. And they find out that they were born in the Aztec times, were protected in this force field during the colonization, and then they were found later on. So yeah, their parents were powerful, magical people. They didn't survive, but and now they met a person where that in this journey that they've gone on that will kind of show them the ways of their powers. So
wow, I love that story. That's so clever. And that force field to protect them from colonization, you can just spin it off in so many different ways. So many stories can come out of that. That's really, really cool. So did you have to do a lot of research into the indigenous population in order to develop your story?
yeah, and I still do research. What's interesting, and the way that I built it out was that, so as you see in the comic, my art style grows and improves over each issue. And that was my intent. Like, I wanted to show people that you can do this without having like the fullest like skill, and then just get better over time, because that's what kids have to really learn, that it's okay to be bad at something at first and then get better. So in the same way, my knowledge is always growing of the indigenous cultures, and I have a lot of respect for it. And it's something that, it's something that I feel like a lot of Latinos don't get in touch with, because we know that we have indigenous backgrounds. We know we have indigenous ancestors, but somewhere along the line, the same way that my parents moved to the United States and didn't teach me Spanish, there was a time in Latin American history where it was demonized to practice the indigenous cultures. So even though like I look at my great grandfather and looks indigenous, and my dad tells me he actually traded tuna, the prickly pears, with Native Americans in Arizona. So he would drive up from Zacatecas to Arizona and trade with them. And he's telling me about his life. And then he was like, oh yeah, his mom was indigenous. We have a picture of her somewhere with her indigenous garb, but we don't know, like, he didn't know her name. He didn't know what tribe and so you go far back enough, it's a big part of what I come from, but I don't know anything about the tribes that I'm descendant of. So, which is why I kind of stuck with the word Aztec, because if you know the indigenous cultures, they didn't really call themselves Aztec. They call themselves Mexica. Nowadays, they're the people who still are in tune with the culture, or Nahua. but like Aztec refers to this almost mythical place called Aztlan, right? So to pay homage without kind of like culturally appropriating is something I really didn't want to do. That's why I use the word Aztec. And in the future, if I can grow this into a real like comic book company, I want to be I want to be hiring and empowering and telling stories from people who have more direct, relationship with these cultures.
Wow, I hope you do, because you're absolutely right. We don't tell our stories. I can relate to that. I remember asking my mom, I still, even as an adult, I'm like, so what can you tell me? I'm like, maybe if I keep asking, she'll remember something. But no, they were not really taught. They were not passed down with the history of who was what or what they did. There's a little few things here and there, but not enough to know exactly where we came from. And one thing I remember being taught when I was very young was, oh, we come from like mestizos, because the indigenous and the Spaniards came here and colonization, and then they mix. And so I was like, okay, so yes, I'm mestiza. And I didn't really know what that meant, even though they explained, oh, they merged, but what does that mean? They didn't tell me that you lose certain things, part of your culture, and why, because, colonization was about erasing all of that because their way was right. And now that I have two kids who are teens, and I've always taught them whatever I can about where we come from, but I too feel like I haven't done enough. And it's funny when you were saying like everybody, we study different populations, and I feel like most people are so interested in the Greeks and the Romans and Africans, but what about us? What about the the Mayas and the Aztecs? And so that's why I love your comic book, because I feel like it's such a great way to entertain kids and educate them, and adults too, of course. Thanks. So that has really huge value. And I can see how some people might not think that there's going to be interest in it. So that's why I'm like, he's got to come onto my podcast, because whoever's listening, I really hope that they support you and that they give it a chance. If they think that, oh, it's not my kind of thing, just give it a try. You never know. So you mentioned something earlier about the progress, which is something I was going to say early on in this conversation, because you posted your progress on Instagram. And I do remember at first, you didn't, I don't think you said, hey, I'm doing a comic book. I think you were just drawing, and I just kept following you. I don't know how long I've followed you for now, but I have seen the progress. And I'm glad you mentioned that you've intentionally shown that you can start off at a lower level and improve. And it's actually something that I've shown my daughter, because she's into anime, she draws, and she would get so frustrated. And I'm like, no, look. And I've actually shown her your page as well as other people's. I'm like, look, you're going to do really well. You should do the same thing he's doing, because he's capturing the progress. And she's done it too. So thank you for that.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's like you just have no idea who you're going to impact. So speaking about how these kids are now creating amazing things, because we have so many influencers. I mean, these kids, they make way more money than me because they know how to manipulate technology, software, the internet. So you said you don't have to have fancy equipment or anything. So can you talk to us a little bit about, if there's a Latino kid right now, or a mom that knows her child has potential, what advice would you give her if her child is getting into the arts? Say they have an iPad or a Chromebook or something to draw on, what basic things can they start with?
Yeah, they can start with anything, honestly. I'm older. I started with pencil and paper, and that was great. I got my first sketch pad when I was like 6 or something like that. And I didn't start getting back into actually trying to get better until after college. So it was like 2016 or 2017, right? So I was like 25 or something like that. And but so just drawing with pencil and paper. I'll show you what I started off with when I got into digital, because people think, oh, you got to get the iPad, you got to get the most fanciest iPad. But this is what I started off with.
What is that?
This is a Wacom Intuos small. And what this does, here's the USB cord, plugs into your computer. You draw on this tablet, but then you look at the screen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I had this desktop that was left over from college that I hadn't been using anymore. And I busted it out, dusted it off, downloaded a free drawing software called Krita, and went at it. And Krita is spelled Krita. So essentially, with a computer I already had and with a $75 Wacom tablet, I learned how to draw digitally, and I still use this tablet to draw my comic.
Oh, that's really cool. So they still make those?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. $75 and then paper and pencil, which, yeah, that's how my daughter started too for a long time. And we just actually finally did get her a tablet after years of her doing that. But that was one of my things. I actually did spend the money on the iPad because I said, do the research. I don't know what you need to ask who or whatever. And she asked her several people. And they said, nothing fancy, but an iPad's great because of whatever. So we did buy her an iPad, but I should have had this discussion with you a lot earlier to save some money.
And the iPad is so it's used by a lot of people, and a lot of so if there's work, you can do professional work with an iPad. It's an amazing tool. I don't have one of the newer ones, so I do use it sometimes. I do use mine sometimes. I actually got it for free from my brother who works in IT. They got rid of an old one, and he was like, "Yo, take it." So it can't do as much as my computers can do. It doesn't have as much power. But I did eventually get in. I did eventually invest in this. Big Huion is the brand. Okay. And it's the cheaper brand versus the Wacom. So this is like 24 inches, in diagonal. And the comparative Wacom is like 2,500. But this was like $1,000 or $900.
Okay, that's really good. That's hopefully this is helping somebody that's listening so that they can help their child, because I feel really guilty for the longest time, and my husband too, and we're like, dang, we should really invest in her, but we don't know what to do. We don't know if we have to buy Illustrator or all of that fancy Procreate or whatever. And I guess she already had something that she talked with her friends. So what about NFTs? Because I have heard so much about NFTs, and at first I had a hard time understanding what they were, but I thought it was an adult thing, but apparently anybody can sell NFTs. Will you educate us a little on what this is and how it works?
Yeah. So I think NFTs, I feel like, are a big opportunity, the same way that we mentioned earlier. The young kids really learned how to do this social media thing and make money off of it, right? But the money is kind of, if it's not through direct sales, it's through advertisement, or however the app decides to pay you out, or the algorithm decides to let you be seen, right? That being said, the Web3 concept is on a different, it's on the blockchain, which is essentially, you can kind of like sum it down to like a different internet, where the internet isn't, the servers aren't owned by Amazon or Google or whoever owns the servers, and we rent space from. The servers they're supposed to be decentralized, and that's a whole topic you can get into, but the idea around the smart contract in the NFT, I feel like is the one part that we're missing, because we're inundated with all this crazy hype around these JPEGs, right? You know, people are selling their digital art for thousands and millions and blah blah, and that's not the important thing, because things could go up and down just like the stock market, and it's going down right now, and I have been talking about how it's probably going to go down soon for a long time. As far as the prices, the price of the cryptocurrency, but these smart contracts that are coded into these pieces of art are what is going to be the technology that people will be using more often. And I've heard the analogy, and it resonated with me, so I'll use it, of these NFTs, these smart contracts are going to be used more like tickets or receipts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the same way that you can buy a ticket to one of your favorite performing artists, let's say the Beatles, if you save that ticket from a very special concert, then it's worth something that's a collectible, right? Right. So instead of buying the piece of paper and saying, what's this piece of paper worth, right? The same way you're saying, what's the JPEG worth? It's not the JPEG, it's what you get with it. It's the contract that the utility that you get behind it. And so what I want to do is kind of one day, hopefully, if it works out, transition to that, to where the NFT will be the Kickstarter, right? So you buy the NFT and you get a comic, but also you have an NFT. And then that NFT will give you access to, let's say, my digital comic reader on my website. And so the same way that if you bought a subscription to Kindle or Comixology, you get access to certain things, but that $6 is gone every month. While the NFT, once you decide to not use it anymore, you could pass it on to someone else, you could sell it. If it comes out at a specific time where the collectability of that specific NFT or ticket in this case becomes more valuable, then it's a collectible. Otherwise, you've gotten your use out of it, and it's and the utility has been utilized, right? So the way that I see it empowering kids to be able to start businesses in a different way and not have to, you know, rent the space or rent the attention from Instagram or TikTok in this case, in you know, more recent, and or whichever platform you decide to like publish on, right? So I published my comic on my website for free, so people could read the first 4 issues for free. I also published the first 4 issues as a digital Kindle reader through Amazon. But if someone buys the book, I get $1 out of the 3 that I sell it for, right? So, you know, taking a little bit, so we're renting that space from Amazon. That's why they charge us that, and it's understandable. But by enabling ourselves to take advantage of the kind of blockchain through NFTs is what they call it right now. Who knows what they'll call it in the future? I think it's going to be impressive. And actually, in my Kickstarter, I'm going to be giving out NFTs for Kickstarter backers. And in the future, I want to be able to build out that access to my comic book reader, so that if you own the NFT, you could read the comic digitally. And it's so.
Okay, that was a lot. Okay, because I'm trying to wrap my head around it, because
Sorry.
That's all right. Because these blockchains, which people are like, what's a blockchain? I was like, you gotta, yeah. But this digital data is pretty much like, I like to think of it as an art gallery that has all this art. And correct me if I'm wrong on how I understood it. And instead of being that physical art that people buy that hold value and can be resold later on, and of course art, the longer you hold on to it, if it's good art, then the value increases and people go goo gaga over it. So that's pretty much what you're creating. You're creating a digital piece of art, in this case your comic book, and that is what you can sell, and that is what people will they'll have that, I guess, digital authentication that it came from you and that they own it. Is that right?
More or less, yep. And underneath it will be a contract that says, if I ever create like a Nahualli con, this is a ticket to it.
Oh,
You know what I'm
okay.
saying? Or in that contract, it could say, for this specific NFT, you could read all of my digital books forever for free. You know,
Oh, I see.
and or for this specific NFT, you could read the 5th issue, you know, only. And so it's, and my idea is going to be, there's going to be levels, but in general, I wanted to make it accessible for everyone. So, you know, the entry level backer tier is $3, right? So you get an NFT for $3.
Got it. That's really, really good because
Yeah.
I just saw, I think it was Danny Trejo doing a little dance because he sold his NFT or something with NFTs. And one of the things that I hear people talking a lot, or at least in the Amigos Club, because you know the founder Danai, she's huge into tech, and she talks about get into NFTs. And she talks so much about Latinos don't really know what NFTs are. They see it just like, because it's a sort of type of ¿cómo se llama? Crypto, right? It's pretty much a different form. People don't call it crypto because it's more
It's built
the
on
art.
top of it.
Right, yeah.
It's built on top of the crypto
Mhm.
currency. Yeah, it's weird. There's levels to it, like the blockchain, cryptocurrency, NFTs on top of that. So the cryptocurrency is built kind of like on top of the blockchain. The blockchain is kind of like the base, and then NFTs are built on top of all of that. So yeah, it's confusing.
And I think that's what intimidates a lot of people, not just Latinos. But since I'm seeing a lot of younger people getting into it, it's good that we're having this conversation because maybe collaborations can be done, support, awareness, all sorts of things. And
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and so the way that I like to say it is, there's a potential that all of the cryptocurrencies go to zero, right? In theory, right? There are some big ones that have been backed by or invested in, we say backed, or, you know, invested into by big entities, banks, companies. Tesla, you know, bought a bunch of it. So we're seeing signs that it's in that trend, even though it's going down right now, it's going in that trend. Same as the stock market, it can go up and down. But historically, the financial system has kept us out of it, of making the kind of wealth that non-people of color have been able to historically, right? Whether that's intentionally through laws and actions, or whether that's through intimidation, by making it look complicated and hard to do, right? So finances is something that we've, as a community, I feel like lately been taking control of, starting to learn more, even though this is very confusing. You know, a few years ago, I bought a book, Investing for Dummies, because I didn't know how to invest and I didn't know what the heck anything was. And since then, I've been able to manage my you know, portfolios or whatever. But it took a little baby step of me reading a book that said that I was a dummy, but and then learning continually on top of that. So my point is, if this is another financial system that will be the basis on which the economy runs, we cannot miss out on this early stage right?
Yep.
Because if we do, then we're back where we started.
And, you know, I know that there's still a lot of skepticism in these type of products or type of investments. And of course, it's mainly because there's lack of understanding about what they are and how to use them. And the other one is, but there's big signs, right? Like I remember when I first heard of crypto was years ago, and here it is still. And now El Salvador is using, I think, Dogecoin as their form of currency. And I believe Ukraine, because of the attacks from Russia, have been leaning into a different type of crypto as well for funding for aid. So when nations start using digital money, digital currency, that's a big sign. I really don't think that it's going to go away like some people say. And that's why I wanted to ask you about the NFTs, because I believe that too is going to stick around forever. It's not, once it's there, I mean, I doubt people are going to just decide to say, oh no, doesn't have any value. And then they own several NFTs. They're not going to want to let go of that. So when miners want to create an NFT and sell it, do you know if there are any restrictions or any fees that they have to pay to sell it? Kind of like I guess like at auction dealers where you have to pay to sell something.
That's a good question. I believe anyone with like an email can create a wallet, and so the process of getting money in there would be would have to come from another bank if they don't have like a bank account, and then once you get fiat dollars in there, you could translate it to, you could turn it into quote unquote to a cryptocurrency. To mint an NFT, they're depending on what cryptocurrency you're using, because there are numerous networks that you could use. So Ethereum is a cryptocurrency. That's a big one used for NFTs. That one includes a lot of gas. So if you're minting it, you're going to pay a gas fee, and that's the fee for these servers to do the computations that it takes to put it on the blockchain. But there's other ones that are like Polygon, which is kind of like a cousin to Ethereum. That's the way I would use it, because it's kind of built on there. But they did it in such a way where the gas fees are nominal, if any. Like they'll be essentially zero. So products like OpenSea, it's cool to like go in and check it out. Like you go to OpenSea, you mint something, and they do what's called a lazy mint. So you don't have to even pay the gas fee on the front end. It's more when someone buys it, that's when the gas fee is. But it's something that as far as like kids go, I think the more important thing is to learn what it all is, right? Kids, they learn so fast. They learn faster than us, right? So if you put them in a class, there's a lot of free resources, videos and stuff like that. If you put them in a class to learn some of this stuff, they're gonna pick it up so quick. And it's gonna be a lot of it is heavy into coding, right? So if you have a kid that is interested in coding or has shown interest in coding, this is a great way to get them involved in something that's new in the world, right? Because everything, Web 2 is what they're calling like the internet before. All that is very easy to learn too, but it's kind of like, it's not becoming like old, but it's going to be integrated, the two things, right? So this new technology is a way to kind of like push them into the forefront, something that's going to be part of the future. And they can learn how to mint through code the art that they do, because that's another thing. Like, I don't think all people are left brain or right brain. I know how to do some code. I obviously was in engineering. I'm obviously a pretty good artist. I was, in sales. I, played the guitar. So it's like, we have the ability to learn a lot of different things, and that's really the message, that don't limit yourself to calling yourself one thing, like an artist or or a scientist, or like left brain, right brain, this, that, and don't limit your kids to that either, because that's just limiting them in the future. You know, there was the Renaissance people, right? Leonardo, Michelangelo, all of them, they were scientists and they were artists and they were philosophers. But we always hear it from the European standpoint. No one talks about Nezahualcóyotl, which was essentially the same thing during the Aztec times. And he had like a university that people would send their kids from all throughout Mexico and Central America to learn from him. And he was the same thing: artist, poet, politician, architect. So that's kind of like where my brain is as far as kids go. Let them be the Renaissance people that if they want to be, and like learn about finances, learn about crypto, learn about how to do art for cheap. Like this is all how we empower ourselves to not be relegated to like the working class forever, right? It's knowledge. It's what will free us, I guess.
I completely agree. When we limit ourselves to being just that one thing, and growing up, that really I struggled with that, because deep down I wanted to do many different things, but society tells you no, just pick one. And so I thought something was wrong with me for years, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I just need to pick one to begin with, and then move on to the next later. And there's nothing wrong with that. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And do you have any events coming up that we should know of? Anything that we can support you with?
Yeah, I got my, excuse me, I got my Kickstarter that's launching early next week, either Monday or Tuesday. I set it for Tuesday, but I might just launch it on Monday. And yeah, it's a great way to, support the project, but also, of course, you get a reward. So you get a copy of the comic for those tiers, or you get a piece of art for the certain tiers. Some tiers you can get a custom piece of art, or you can get an ad in the comic, as long as it's kid friendly. So there's some cool tiers. It's not a super like crazy high goal. I set it at 2,500. I just want to be able to get it printed, get it shipped, put a little bit of money for paying the bills, and then the rest of it's going to go into continuing building the series. And then you'll get a NFT as well. And then from in July 15th through the 7th, July 15th through the 17th, I'll be at Comic Palooza in Houston.
I love it. And, for people watching or listening, I think that the best way to educate yourself is also by being a consumer of the product, because then you get to see the receiver end and understand how, what it is that you get. I'm definitely going to be investing. I'm looking forward to it. And it's too bad that I'm not close to Houston. Otherwise, I would go, and I'd love to meet you in person. But I just want to thank you so much for educating us, for talking about, your story and the story behind the comic book series and your intent with it. It's really, really great. And I'm very happy that you're doing it. So thank you so much, because you're not just providing entertainment, you're providing education.
Thank you. Thank you for having this platform. I think it's important to show people like us doing things like this, and things like what you're doing, and like all the people in the Amigos Club, and kind of coming together and learning together.
Absolutely. And lastly, actually, I'm going to ask you a few fun questions before we wrap it up. But before I forget, where can people find you?
Yes. So the easiest way is to go to my Instagram. It's timemachine.crtv. Time Machine is kind of like my handle, like my nickname, like my artist name. And then the short link to my website is TM, like Time Machine, CRTV, like creative.com. So tmcrtv.com. That'll take you to my link tree thing. And then from there, you can access all of my content.
Perfect. Good. I hope that people go visit you, check out your page, and help you with that The fundraiser. All right, now for the fun part. I'm going to throw out a few words, and you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
All right. Love.
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adventure.
Life.
Roots.
I thought of the Spanish word for roots, which is not helpful. I thought of raíces.
Right. Still, that was the first thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Family.
Family. Love again. That one came up again. Yeah.
Artist.
Storyteller.
Last question. If you could talk to 10-year-old Josh about anything at all, what would you talk to him about?
That's a good question. It's funny. Like I always think about like what would my life be if I would have went full time into art and went into like instead of going the whole engineering path, because I would have got those 10,000 hours much quicker. But there's something very, very valuable that had come to me from going to engineering and learning how to learn like complex things. So I don't know. I probably just tell them to like stay confident and just be yourself. The world tries to change you, and you just gotta try your hardest not to deviate too far from those roots, those raíces that is you as a person. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's very wise advice. It's so true too. The world will try to change you. Well, Josh, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to get your comic book.
I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Hey, did you like that episode? If you did, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you may be listening and write a review. If you want more tips or some behind-the-scenes videos, make sure to follow my mom at DaliTalks on Instagram. You can turn on notifications for her posts and stories as well. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. See you next time.